Good morning, welcome to Breakfast with Sally Nugent and Dan Walker.
Our headlines for you today. New COVID travel rules come into force. Anyone travelling to the UK now has to show evidence of a negative coronavirus test.
Good morning. The test must be taken in the 48 hours before travel. It's the latest measure aimed at curbing the spread of the Omicron variant.
Dysfunctional and chaotic, a Foreign Office whistleblower delivers a damning verdict on the government's handling of the Afghan evacuation.
With hundreds of homes still without power 11 days after Storm Arwen, brace yourself for Storm Barra, with weather warnings in place across the UK.
We're looking at widespread gales today. The highest gusts will be around the coast, and an additional hazard will be snow across the northern half of the country. Some of our higher routes likely to experience blizzards and drifting.
The actor Rebel Wilson tells us her determination to get healthy saw her lose more than 5 stone and how it sparked more interest than any of her Hollywood success.
I've noticed that it's been getting a lot of attention, and I go, so is that what a woman has to do in the world, is just lose weight to get attention?
Good morning. It's time for a winter of sleepless nights as the Ashes gets underway. But with bad weather, quarantine and lockdowns, well, there's never been a series quite like this one. We'll bring you the latest from Australia.
Good morning. It is Tuesday, the 7th of December. People coming to the UK now have to show evidence of a negative COVID test taken no more than 48 hours before they travel.
It's the latest in a series of measures introduced in response to the Omicron variant. Here's our business correspondent Theo Leggett with more.
If you want to travel to the UK, you'll need to take a test first. Under rules that came into force this morning, anyone over the age of 12 will have to provide proof they've tested negative for COVID, even if they're fully vaccinated. It's the latest in a series of new measures brought in amid growing concern about the so-called Omicron variant. The government had already reintroduced PCR tests for new arrivals. So now passengers face compulsory testing both before they travel and within 2 days of entering this country. The government has also brought back its so-called red list of high-risk regions. 11 southern African countries are now on it. Nigeria was added yesterday. Arrivals from these regions are restricted to UK and Irish nationals and residents. Anyone coming from a red list country will have to go into supervised quarantine in hotels. A 10-day stay for an adult currently costs £2,285.
The government insists the new measures are necessary to slow the spread of Omicron and to protect public health. But airlines and tourism operators are deeply worried that, faced with extra costs and inconvenience, many people will simply choose not to travel at all.
Prices have come down, but for a family of 4, the need for tests before and after travelling can still add hundreds of pounds to the cost of a holiday abroad.
We've seen a really significant drop-off of demand. Consumer confidence has now been significantly diminished and undermined. The government is changing the rules far too quickly with very, very knee-jerk decisions, frankly. We've seen 2 changes to the travel rules within the space of a few days.
The COVID pandemic has already caused an unprecedented crisis in the travel industry. Now, operators complain that just as they were beginning to recover, their wings have been clipped once again. Theo Leggett, BBC News.
All eligible adults in Wales will be offered a booster vaccination by the end of January as part of efforts to combat the new coronavirus variant. The Welsh Government says the NHS aims to ramp up the number of vaccinations from 19,000 a day to more than 200,000 each week. 4 cases of the Omicron variant have been found so far in Wales, with experts warning more are set to follow.
The EastEnders star and Spandau Ballet member Martin Kemp has dressed up like Father Christmas for a festive film to encourage people to get vaccinated against COVID-19 this winter. The video, which has been released today by the government, shows the actor-musician preparing for Christmas by booking an MOT for his sleigh. It's part of the government's campaign to get people to get a coronavirus booster or flu jab when they're eligible.
A whistleblower who worked on the British operation to evacuate people from Afghanistan has told MPs that only a tiny fraction of those who asked for help received it.
Raphael Marshall, who resigned from his job in September, told MPs the process was dysfunctional and chaotic, and it was clear that some of those left behind were murdered by the Taliban. Here's our diplomatic correspondent, James Landale.
Kabul airport last summer as thousands sought to flee the advancing Taliban. Amid chaotic scenes, Britain and other Western powers tried to evacuate those it could. But according to a whistleblower, there was chaos in London too. The Foreign Office Crisis Centre was handling requests from Afghans at risk from the Taliban because of their links to the UK. One official working there, Raphael Marshall, said the process of choosing who could be evacuated was arbitrary and dysfunctional. He said up to 150,000 people applied for evacuation under this scheme, but he estimated fewer than 5% of these people have received any assistance. It's clear that some of those left behind have since been murdered by the Taliban. Mr. Marshall, who has since left the diplomatic service, said there were not enough staff, and one Saturday afternoon he was the only person monitoring and processing emails in the Afghan Special Cases inbox, thousands of which, he said, remained unread. The chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee said Mr. Marshall's evidence raised serious questions about the leadership of the Foreign Office.
I'm deeply concerned by many of the things that the whistleblower has raised, including about all those at the very top of the department. The whistleblower, Mr. Marshall, was dealing with very, very difficult situation in which many of us were trying to get out people who had served us with enormous courage and integrity for sometimes as much as 20 years. And so I'm extremely concerned to hear what he said.
Mr. Marshall singled out Dominic Raab, then Foreign Secretary, who, he said, delayed taking decisions until he had all the facts set out in well-presented tables. For the Foreign Secretary to make this request suggests he did not fully understand the situation, Mr. Marshall said. A source close to Mr. Raab said the challenge was not the speed of decisions, but verifying identity and securing safe passage to the airport. A Foreign Office spokesman said government staff had worked tirelessly to evacuate more than 15,000 people in a fortnight. James Landau, BBC News.
Well, let's talk now to our chief political correspondent, Adam Fleming. Morning, Adam. Great to see you. Really uncomfortable reading for the Deputy Prime Minister this morning.
I'm sure it will be, because there were rumours about this at the time and MPs were complaining quite loudly and vociferously about emails not being read or responded to quickly, but this lays bare just how difficult that situation was at the time. Although, let's also remember, this was an emergency and the collapse of the Taliban took the entire world by surprise, so everyone was scrambling to respond to what was happening in Kabul at the time. But having said that, I'm sure Dominic Raab will be feeling uncomfortable about it, just like he felt uncomfortable when he got fired as Foreign Secretary just a few short weeks after all of this happened. It will also be slightly uncomfortable because he's doing interviews this morning in his new job as the Justice Secretary about reforms to the prison service. So we'll actually hear directly from him pretty soon what his response to this is. It will also be uncomfortable reading for the senior civil servants who are actually responsible for HR in government departments like the Foreign Office, and they are actually going to be quizzed by the committee that received this evidence from the whistleblower this afternoon. So pretty soon we'll also hear what they've got to say about this. But I suppose the people that will be feeling most uncomfortable of all, people still stuck in Afghanistan fearing for their lives.
Adam, thank you very much indeed. That's Adam Fleming in Westminster, and Dominic Raab, as Adam said, will be on this programme later this morning, just after 7:30.
Jails in England and Wales are set targets for the first time for keeping out drugs and for testing prisoners. Body scanners, biometric identification and drugs dogs are among some of those measures proposed to stem the flow of dangerous substances that the Ministry of Defence says wreak havoc in prisons.
The difficulty with this is that it's not a new ambition. Governments, including this government, have said they want to do this before. And what gets in the way of delivering their ambition in prisons is that the places where this is most needed, the prisons where people go to from court, are the most overcrowded, the oldest, the most dilapidated prisons.
Thousands of Tesco workers at distribution centres across the UK have voted to strike in the run-up to Christmas following a dispute over pay. Industrial action is planned to start on the 20th of December and last until Christmas Eve, impacting just over half of the supermarket chain's warehouses at their busiest time of year.
Severe weather warnings are in place across the UK as Storm Barra sweeps in from the Atlantic this morning.
Disruptive winds, heavy rain and snow are expected in some parts, with the storm currently making its way over the Irish Sea.
Chris Page is on the County Down coast. Chris, I know there's a little bit of delay on the line and it's pretty windy there as well. Give us an idea of conditions at the moment.
Yes, Dan. Here in Newcastle in County Down, an early morning dog walker has just observed to me that it is getting a little bit breezy and damp, and I think it's fair to say it's getting more breezy and damp with every minute. Just as we were setting up here, the winds really started to whip up, so this is the start of Storm Barra. Across the border in the Irish Republic, it's actually the highest level of weather warning in 3 southwestern coastal counties, counties Clare, Kerry and Cork, and in other coastal areas including Dublin. The government has advised that schools should close in order to try to keep people safe. Here in Northern Ireland, it's an orange warning at the moment. It's just come into force at 6 o'clock. It's in force until 9 o'clock tomorrow morning, so the orange warning means that people should be prepared for some chance of damage to property and of disruption to travel. And in coastal areas such as here by the foot of the Mourne Mountains in County Down, right round the coast up to the north of County Antrim, winds could get up to about 75 miles an hour, perhaps even a little bit more than that, and inland more likely to be around 50 miles an hour. So people in Northern Ireland will bear the brunt of Storm Barra first in the UK as it comes in across the Atlantic.
Thank you for that, Chris. Apologies for the quality of the mic there. You can probably tell that the weather is causing some issues.
Yeah, because of the conditions. Now let's go straight to Carol, who has the proper detailed weather forecast for the next couple of days for us. And Carol, a really complicated picture, I imagine.
It is, Sally. There's so much going on with the weather today with all the different elements involved. So let's start with Storm Barra. Good morning, everybody. So as Chris was saying there, we're looking at widespread gales. The strongest winds will be around the coast, but in addition to that, we're also looking at snow. Now, with the wind, that's likely to cause blizzards on the hills in the north. So what we have first thing this morning is the risk of ice for some of us. We're starting off with a dry and a bright start to the day, but already the rain pushing into Northern Ireland will progress across the Irish Sea into mainland parts of Britain. And as it engages with the cold air, we'll see it readily turn to snow across parts of northern England and also Scotland. And behind it, we're not out of the woods because there will still be blustery, heavy showers. It's going to feel cold today wherever you are. So let's look at the snow as we go through today. It will come in across northern England, then it will go into the southern uplands and the highlands. These are the kind of snow depths we're looking at, roughly above about 200 metres. The wind very much a feature for more of us today. Inland, we're looking at 40 to 50 mile an hour gusts quite widely, and around the coasts, 70 to 80 mile an hour gusts. So all this combined together means it could well lead to some disruption. Then as we go through the course of this evening and overnight, you can see we still have this big curl of rain coming in, still heavy blustery showers, still windy as well, and still wintry on the tops of the hills. I'll have a longer, more detailed forecast in about half an hour.
See the headlines as they happen and watch BBC News live in the app and get the full story with bbc.co.uk/news. Follow the story for all the latest with BBC News.